Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Toss-Up. I'm Riley Woodall. This won't be your typical episode on IUSTV Sports because today we're taking a deep dive into the realm of sports media and the sports world as a whole to answer some of its most burning questions. Over the course of the next 20 minutes, you're going to hear the perspectives of several student media members as they discuss the state of the industry they want to work in, and you'll get their opinions on the good and bad things about the current condition of modern athletics. It's all next on the Toss-Up. And welcome to the Toss-Up, everyone. I'm joined by Talia Goodman, Ben Haller, and Alex Hines. You'll hear from Preston Andrews in a little bit. Thank you all for coming on the show to talk sports media and the sports world as a whole. I've got several questions that were sent into the show and some that I think a lot of people are going to want to know the answer to. So we'll start with this one, a pretty prevalent one with the recent advances in technology. I think you guys know where I'm going with this. Do you think AI is going to do more harm or more good to the sports media world?
I mean, I think it will end up doing more harm, but I think there are some uses that could be positive, right? Like, for example, I am quite terrible at writing headlines for my stories, right? But putting it into something like a ChatGPT, it can single out the keywords that'll get you hits on Google. Like, there are some ways where it can be useful, but overall, like, ChatGPT is super unreliable. Like, it spits out false facts all the time.
Yes.
And so it's definitely not trustworthy, and it'll end up taking some jobs potentially. So I think mostly negative with a few small positive things you can take out of it.
Yeah, I'm team harm, and that last reason you brought up is the biggest thing for me is just the jobs that I think will be lost. Right now, ChatGPT, like you said, it's really unreliable with someone like trying to get to write articles and sports recaps. But I think with advancement, even in a couple of years, I think those are going to be really good. But even if, all you have to do is plug in the information. So I think there will become a point where a lot of those writing jobs are gone and given to AI, so I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I'm, again, really worried about where this could potentially go because we've already seen scandals where people have been laid off. I think Sports Illustrated, I think even ESPN had articles that were written entirely by AI and oftentimes in smaller sports. And aside from false information, which there are plenty of that in those articles, it takes away some of the feel. I mean, when you have media people that are there, writers, reporters, they can get you the feel of an event in a way that AI simply can't because they can tell you things beyond the score, the stats. That's all nice, but we want something more when we're trying to consume this type of media.
I know AI anchors and AI reporters are a thing, but I don't think it'll translate over to sports as much, at least on the talent perspective, just because I don't think it has that shared human experience, that emotion, that passion that regular humans that have the job can bring into it, for example, broadcasters and talent as well. We'll move on and kind of switch gears a little bit. I'm curious how you guys think TV and streaming services will kind of balance each other out with these billion-dollar media deals that we're seeing. Which streaming services do you think are going to kind of take over, and where do some of the traditional cable TV broadcasts fit into the mix?
I think right now what you're seeing, obviously, just in the world in general, is that a lot of people are going to streaming services, and honestly, people still have YouTube TV, but there are people cutting out that sort of live TV. And what really has worked is CBS getting Paramount Plus, or NBC getting Peacock, and owning those two. I think those are two networks that are going to dominate the sports world because they can put their sports not only on live and YouTube TV, but when you see a game's live on NBC, a lot of times it's on Peacock. You see a game live on CBS, I think it's always on Paramount Plus. I think that's their thing. So I think CBS, NBC are the two biggest that'll thrive to me.
Yeah, I kind of like that. And additionally to that, I think there are other streaming services that are kind of coming into their own. I mean, Amazon got into it a couple years ago. Apple did as well. They've got MLS pretty much on lock. They have baseball coming in, and with ESPN losing Sunday Night Baseball, for example, I think we'll continue to see these streaming services at least be high bidders in these. I don't know if they'll actually win, but I think it's really headed that way where these newer services are going to dominate a bit more.
No, I think you guys are right, and I think it sucks, honestly, like
Yeah.
to have to get that many streaming services too, because not one is covering everything you want to watch, right? Like Peacock has some of the college basketball, but then you have to go for soccer to a different thing. Like, and Netflix is coming into it now with some wrestling and some football. Like,
Right.
everyone's trying to get their hands on games, and it's all in different places right now, so it's hard to grasp all of it.
That's kind of the one thing I'm really worried about is too many subscriptions. If you're having sports fans pay way too much money for way too many subscriptions just to watch their teams, I think that could be really damaging down the line.
It's already that way.
It is,
Yeah.
right, but it's going to I'm worried it's going to continue
Yeah.
down that path and it's going to get even worse. We're going to bring in Preston Andrews for the first Preston question of the show. Preston, your question is, how do leagues and media companies balance profit with ethical concerns as sports betting and gambling continue to rise in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think this is an incredibly prevalent question. It's loaded just because of all the money that is in this question. But what I think leagues really have to do in order to be successful in this gambling era is they have to separate the play on the field and really the commercialization of their production, right? I think a lot of us fell in love with the Four Nations face-off just a week ago.
Yeah.
At the start of every period, you saw the ESPN Bet live odds. Now, what the NFL and the NBA have been able to do, whether it's successfully, I think it's problems they wish they wouldn't have, but when the gambling part creeps into sports, and is it hypocritical? Absolutely. But when you see athletes that bet, we've seen 1-year suspensions. We've seen people get lifetime bans. I think those are things you have to police extremely seriously. And then on the commercialization side of things, it's only something that's going to continue to grow. So the more knowledgeable you can make your viewers, like I think there's a gambling hotline, right? They don't usually make hotlines for things that aren't pretty big issues. So to have that and just to be aware of the way that gambling is going to continue to grow, because it's not going anywhere, Riley.
Sure, certainly is it, Preston. Solid analysis there from Mr. Andrews. The next question I want to pose to the floor. College athletics and college sports has undergone so many drastic transformations over the past few years. NIL, transfer portal, conference realignment, pay for play. The list goes on. From your guys' perspective, what new changes do you think we could potentially see in the next few years? And do you think we're going to get to a point where we're going to need a couple separate governing bodies for the revenue-generating sports and the non-revenue-generating sports?
I mean, I think the one that everyone's talking about right now, especially with college basketball, is the expansion of the tournament. So I think that's one change that we'll see, maybe not as big of a deal, but that's one thing. And then I think just with rev sharing coming into play, players getting paid more money, and I don't know if we'll see it equally on the women's and men's side. There
Right.
was something that made that the case early on, but that was just taken back. So now it's kind of up in the air what we'll see there. Another thing that I'm liking that we're seeing is eligibility rules changing. So
Yep.
JUCO kids getting their extra years.
Which is really cool.
It's really cool. I
Opportunities
love
for
it.
them,
I
yeah.
love that passed. But I think there's a lot of things being thrown around right now, and some of it's sticking, and you don't really know what's going to stick and what isn't.
It's kind of like throwing a bunch of ideas at the wall and
Yes.
seeing what does land so that they can keep it moving forward. Ben and Alex.
So I think right now that obviously what we've seen through the first couple of years of NIL is, in a large part, there's some good that comes out of it, absolutely. But in a large part, it's been a problem. Just with, the idea was that, all right, there are things that these players should be making money for, but it necessarily shouldn't be drawing you to a certain school or another. That's the idea. With rev share coming in, it actually is going to regulate things a little more because of that cap that's on their schools. Now, mid-majors are going to have a problem keeping up. They're going to have to cut sports. Some sports will become club.
Yeah.
But what happens with rev share coming in is NIL is going to become a little bit more regulated because I think governing bodies are going to start having more of a say.
No more shady agency.
No.
That's something
Yes.
with the
It'll be more
regulation of NIL.
Right.
Yeah, that'd
It'll
be
be more
nice.
public too. You have to put it out there how much you're paying them, which I love having that.
There's going to be some problems with legislation now because I think the state of Oregon just came out and they're putting their own legislation in that says you don't have to disclose it.
Wow.
So it's going to be a mess, but I do think that once rev share comes around, it'll clean it up.
Yeah, I think on the whole, being able to actually have that transparency is something that's been really needed over the last couple of years. I think we've been trying to really get that base under us with kind of the NIL and just all the money. And that's why I do think that we probably should have that extra sort of separation, just because I think, this is something that really should have happened with realignment in the first place. It should have been something that wasn't required of all sports because, we've seen how it impacts soccer, baseball, softball, having to travel from, say, here in Indiana all the way to Washington to Oregon to California. So I think, we're a bit behind in that, and that's, something you can't, change. but I think at least being able to have that extra oversight for the revenue sports, for football, for basketball, to kind of have a bit better of control on things, at least as we continue to go forward and more money is in it.
Yeah, you guys bring up a lot of really good points. I'm excited for the day a few years down the line when we have a set system and all these questions are kind of ironed out, because that's when I think college athletics are really, really going to flourish. We'll kind of stick on this similar topic of college athletics a little bit. Is the transfer portal in college, free agency in the pros, and the gross amount of money, some might say, being thrown around in some of these deals out of control, and why?
I don't think the amount of money is a problem right now. I think it's who the money is going to, and it being so much of a differing landscape is the problem. I think college sports is becoming the MLB, which is obviously another issue, but the issue obviously is just that there's no salary cap. So teams like the Los Angeles Dodgers are spending 3 times as much as teams like the Miami Marlins. And I think you're going to see that a little bit more with college sports is that's becoming the issue. Again, no one's saying that people are making too much money in the MLB. They're saying that the teams aren't spending enough at the bottom.
Right.
So right now, I think with college sports is there has to be some sort of even playing field. It's never going to be 100% even across the board, but right now it's just way out of control.
See, I don't really agree. I do think they're being paid too much money. I think coming from a women's basketball standpoint, and even men's too, a college freshman should not be making $1 million. You haven't played a day of college basketball. Why are you getting paid more than 6 figures? And even even the high 6 figures, I'm like, why have you earned that? You were playing in high school. You should have to earn your money at least. I think there should be some regulations on a recruit being paid that much money coming in.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of some of the selling points for some of those colleges
know,
getting
I
those
get
athletes
it,
to come
but
through.
that
I'm not saying
much?
it's okay. I'm just simply saying that's one of the selling points for some of these universities. Alex.
I think it's a bit different between college and pros, because I think with pros we kind of get caught up on how much money, millions of dollars that are going to people, because we also, to this point, we now actually know what they're getting. For college, that'll be the case in the future, but right now with professionals, we know how much they're getting paid. And while, yes, people get hung up on the high money, I don't think that's the problem. I mean, if a team is willing to pay that, go for it. I'm not going to regulate a billionaire's pocketbooks for professional sports. But I do think it has, with college, it's a bit rough because, we've had that discussion on whether it's going to be, are they going to be considered employees at some point? And at some point, it's way too hairy of a problem to really just say yes or no. But I do agree that there really should be some sort of a bit better regulations on how much you can earn. I understand with, say, basketball, one and done, how do you calculate a guy that's only going to be here for a year to a football player that's going to be here 3 years, baseball player that's going to be here 3 years. So I think there's a lot of, confusion and uncertainty. But I think at the college level, I think we are starting to see those numbers rise to a bit uncomfortable levels.
Yeah. Let's bring Preston back in for our last question before break. Preston, we've seen the impact that social media can have on a player, coach, team, media member, you name it. Many aspects about it are really good. Others are pretty damaging. So in your opinion, how will social media continue to change the way audiences view sports, how media members create sports content, and how do you manage the vast online discourse?
Yeah, we've seen media really change the past couple years, and one thing I think we've really gotten away from is what is regularly scheduled programming anymore, right? I love the Pat McAfee show, but I don't sit down from 12 to 2 and watch it, right? But the clips that I'm able to digest on Twitter, that's stuff that we go to really get our news now. And I think it's just sports media is going to follow the societal norms, right? We've seen TikTok, we've seen Instagram, we've seen not necessarily things that are generated strictly for clicks, but it's short attention spans nowadays. Something that I think is going to really continue to grow is people are going to love to listen to podcasts, right? We don't like to go for a walk and listen to the birds chirp, Riley. So I think it's really interesting just the way that these different forms are coming in. And really, I think the closest thing you can pay attention to is just society and the way that people act. That's the way that sports media is going to follow, because at the end of the day, that's going to be what sells.
Well, on the contrary, Preston, I actually like listening to the birds on my morning walks, but I do understand what you're saying. Good stuff from Preston Andrews, everyone. Coming up, we've got more answers to some burning questions about the sports world. Back in a moment.
The Toss-Up, Fridays on IUSTV.
Welcome back to the toss-up. It's time now to focus in on some specific sports questions. Guys, we're going to start with the NBA. This is a question that was sent into the show. Is there a good plan to fix the NBA? Is it a shortened season, less rest, more effort, a combination of all three, something else entirely? What is that plan, Alex?
You know, I think that's a very broad question when considering the whole league. I think, when it comes to the actual product that is on the court, I think for the most part, there's not a ton you need to fix. I think, maybe you like it, maybe you don't, but the way that basketball is played at the pro level is not going to change. I do understand people's concerns about, load management and just the fact that you're not always getting the stars on every given day. And so I'm not quite sure what that answer is. I think certainly you want to try and find a way that in this 82-game season, you're able to get your stars out there pretty much every game, because imagine buying a ticket thinking you're going to see Luka and LeBron and you don't. That's not a cheap ticket by any means. So again, I'm not quite sure how you fix that, whether you try and add extra rest or whether, I don't know, shortening the season is really the right answer. I don't think it is, but I'm not quite sure what really is the right answer. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
Look, I think what you have to do is kind of trace it back to the root of the problem. So I do agree that the biggest issue, or one of them, that there are so many bad things about it, is the stars are not playing enough games. And, so many legal issues that you can't put a requirement in and say that your stars have to play so many games and can't sit out for a certain amount of games if they're healthy. So I think what you do is to incentivize them playing more games, you have to expand the playoffs a little bit. And I know people don't like that. People are already upset with the play-in tournament right now. But I actually think you need to make that play-in tournament a longer series and maybe add some more teams into that play-in tournament. And here's what it does, too, because people say, all right, now the regular season doesn't matter. But say you add 2 more teams, 4 teams get a bye. That bye becomes really valuable.
Yeah.
So what you do is you still have some importance of trying to get a top 4 spot in the league. So I think, that decreases the amount of regular season games that they'll have. And if you increase the playoffs and take maybe a chunk of 6-7 games that would be in the regular season, make that now the playoffs, those at least 7 games that the players are more incentivized to play in, I think that it's more of a percentage thing than total amount of games that the stars want to sit out. So that's more quantity of games they'll play in the regular season, and I think that'll fix a lot of issues.
It's kind of like the college football playoff, right?
Yeah.
You get more teams in there, more fans, and more people are drawn
That's
to the
another
postseason.
great part.
Yeah, Talia.
For me, I don't know what the problem is on the court, and that's the problem. It's because I can't watch it, because I'm not going to pay for League Pass to watch my favorite team. I'm not going to do that. So either people are watching illegally or not watching at all, which is why the NBA is losing money. Because I can't watch my favorite team because I'm not still in Boston. And there are some games, obviously, that are on national TV, but I'm not a Pacers fan, so I can't just watch my team here. And so I think that's the unfortunate part of it now. I think both of you had some really good points about the problems maybe on the floor, but I wouldn't know.
We'll kind of switch over to the NBA's counterpart, the WNBA, and we'll make this one a little bit quicker. It's in one of its most, if not its most popular eras. It had a very successful season last year. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, all those college stars in the W playing, but it still reportedly and notably lost money. So is there a way for the W to eventually get to a point where they can make profit?
I mean, one of the big reasons why they lost money this year is because they're finally giving women the rights that men have had of having private charters to get to their games. That was $25 million they paid for that, which they should have had for a while now. That's something that
Long time coming.
Yeah, they shouldn't be walking through public airports as, can you imagine Caitlin Clark walking through a public airport and what would happen to her? I don't know. So I think that's part of the reason they're losing money. And I know it's not still in its startup phase, but there are a lot of things they're doing to position the league to do better that cost money. So you have to invest to get the product you want. And they saw growth in every area last year, whether it was ticket sales, whether it was merch sales, attendance, viewership. They saw tremendous growth in every area. So I think it will get to that point, but you have to go through some of those growing pains to get there.
Yeah, I think what you said was interesting about it not being in a startup phase. But I think back to the history of all the professional sports leagues right now. I can't remember, maybe a spike that I expect to see. Like you said, ticket sales are up even though they're losing money. Viewership's up even though they're losing money. So I think there is some sort of growing pain that they have right now, even though that, this is the year where, everything spiked. That doesn't automatically mean the money's going to spike right away. It's a tricky game. I mean, these other sports have to make so much money to cover the losses that you said. I mean, the charter, like that stuff is not cheap.
No.
I think there's just a lot of figuring out to do right now and ways to, maybe cut some corners and save costs in certain areas that the WNBA just isn't used to yet having these problems.
Alex, quickly.
Yeah, it's not a startup phase, but it's a growth phase right now. I mean, this is a start of a new era, essentially, and so naturally, it's not going to come immediately. So I think you give that some more time, and I think you continue to allow viewership to grow, profits to rise, because I think the longer we're in this new era, if you will, of the WNBA, you're going to start to see those continue to grow, and eventually it'll be able to help pay off the fact that you're spending more money now to try and really boost the league forward. Eventually you're going to see those returns. You just have to wait, and patience is a hard thing to have. I know.
Patience is key, right? Patience is key in a lot of things in life. Let's get Preston back in one last time. Preston, if you found the magic lamp tomorrow and a genie came out of it and said you could become the commissioner of any league, any sport, professional or college, and change whatever you wanted to, what would you pick and what would you change?
Yeah, Riley, this feels like the question when somebody asks you when you're young, like what your favorite sport is, and you just go with whatever season it is now. So I'm going to be in charge of NCAA basketball, and so I'm going to make up a position. They don't have a commissioner, and then I'm going to do nothing and not expand the tournament. So I think what's been really interesting is we hear cries to increase the tournament. College basketball, there's a crazy amount of parity right now. We've seen number one teams, or seeds rather, about 20 years ago, they're making it to the Final Four at about a 45% clip. That's down to about 35. I think with the transfer portal and NIL, you've got guys on 14, 15, 16 seed teams playing for even more, right? Can you imagine what Jack Golke's NIL valuation would be had he come back for another year after an incredible run as a 14 seed at Oakland? So I think the NCAA men's basketball tournament, and women's tournament for that matter, is perfect exactly where it's at. I don't think we need to spice up Tuesday and Wednesday any more than it already is. And so if you give me that role, Riley, I'm going to create a job and do nothing.
Awesome job from one of IU Sports Media's brightest up-and-comers. Preston, thanks for the time. We've got time for just one more question. Bit of a fun one, guys. It's simple, but maybe not a simple answer. This one comes in from IU Sports Media GOAT and Pig Trail Nation guru from KNWA Fox 24, Evan Kamiko. He wants to know, who is the greatest of all time, the GOAT toss-up host?
You just called him the GOAT. So it feels
Yeah.
like you're trying to force an answer, which
Right.
wouldn't be yourself, which is very
I'm not
unselfish
voting
of
for
you,
myself.
Riley.
No.
I'm someone that looks towards the future. Give me Luke Brenneman.
Hey, yeah, I like that answer. Alex.
I'm gonna go to Evan just because he was the one that was here when I started,
Yes.
and he's done great stuff going forward. So sorry, Riley. Sorry, Joe Cronin.
okay.
I'm gonna go with Evan.
I'm a suck up. I'm a teacher's pet. Riley,
Oh,
I'm,
hey.
I'm giving it to you, Riley. I'm sitting
Hey, I
next to
No
you
Joe
today.
Cronin. No Joe Cronin answer.
Hey, I got two. Joe Cronin, and then on top of that, Hank Joseph. You guys, some of you guys know who Hank Joseph was. Came in, guest hosted a few times. He did a great job. But in all seriousness, Evan, he's my true MVP. He's a guy that took a chance on Joe and I, and we're incredibly grateful. I can speak for Joe and myself. We're grateful and blessed to be in the long line of talented toss-up hosts. That'll do it for the show this week. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to continue the discussion and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at IUSTV Sports, and give our toss-up socials a follow on those same platforms as well. Remember, the sports world will change every single day, but the love we have for athletics will never go away. How about that rhyme? With that, there's one thing left to do, so toss it up, find out if we'll catch it, and as always, we'll see you next week. God bless everyone.
Thanks for watching IUSTV Sports. Be sure to subscribe at IUSTV and follow us on Instagram and X at IUSTV Sports.